Okay. Um, so this is really just about evaluating your business idea. And one of the biggest things that we talk to our clients about is really first and foremost to do kind of a self-evaluation of yourself. And it sounds kind of corny and people think, you know, I didn't want to go down that path. But you really have to think about a lot of different things because oftentimes we find that our clients who come to us, maybe sometimes do so out of frustration. They've had a bad day at work and they think, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm tired of working for someone else and, everyone or my boss getting all of the money or the glory or whatever the case might be. Sometimes it's just a signal that maybe you need to change jobs. Sometimes it's a signal that, yeah, maybe you should start your own business. So, you want to look at a couple of these things that we've outlined. Are you a good leader? Can you kind of you know, take the bull by the horns and move forward and, have a lot of different balls in the air all at one time? And are you capable of making decisions, comfortable making decisions? And they're not always fun decisions, as you can imagine. There are some really cool things that you get to do when you own your own business, things that you've always dreamt about. But then there are some cruddy things too. You have to discipline people. You might have to, um, tell a client or a customer no about something, or you might have to fire someone, whatever the case may be. There are some, like I said, crummy decisions that need to be made too. Do you enjoy competition? And what we say about that is, when you're in a business, you're kind of in a competition with yourself. You want it to be successful, so you're hopefully kind of looking at the goals that you've set for yourself and pushing yourself to meet those goals. But you're also looking at the competition, other businesses who are in your same industry, so to speak, and seeing, how you're stacking up against them. And you obviously want to push yourself forward. So do you enjoy that competition? Do you have self-discipline? And this is probably the biggest thing. Sometimes people are just very unaware that so much work goes into a small business, especially the first year or two until you really establish your business and you have a good following. It's up to you as the business owner to get up in the morning, make sure the lights are turned on early at the business, making sure everything's ready to go. You'll have a very full day. You have to keep to those schedules. You can't just say, oh, I'm going to close today at 3 when, your hours are posted until 5 o'clock. And then even after the workday is over, afterwards, you're going to have a lot to do. There's a lot that goes into keeping that small business running. So you have to make sure that you're self-disciplined and that you can do this all by yourself. You don't have to be directed by someone. Are you persistent? You're going to get a lot of no's sometimes before you get a lot of yeses, whether it be to a bank who you're seeking financing from, or maybe a vendor who you need to establish credit with, or just growing your business in general. So you really have to be persistent. And sometimes I always tell clients this is awesome that you're here and you're thinking about starting your business. um, it might not be the right time for you. You might need to get some ducks in order. So there are some things that we're going to talk about in terms of persistence, that you can work on until you are ready. I tell people all the time, don't do it until you have your ducks in a row, because if you try and take some shortcuts, chances are you're going to have some problems on your hand. So, um, make sure you do it the right way. You want to make sure you plan ahead. You want to have a good business plan in place. You want to have short term and long term goals. You want to think about a whole bunch of different things. It's not just the day to day when you own your small business. You have to think of a lot of different things, everything from financial planning to your marketing seasons and how you're going to market your business, and a whole bunch of things. Obviously, are you a risk taker? Entrepreneurs are generally risk takers. The trick is to to go about it so that they're calculated risks and not just, willy-nilly decisions that you make. But you have to have a little bit of that, flip flop in your stomach sometimes to make that jump, even though it's a little bit scary. As long as you do the research the right way and it's calculated, hopefully you'll land on your feet with it. But you do have to be able to take some risk. Again, workload and schedule, you really have to be prepared to do that. Again, a lot of people look at owning their own business as having more freedom. Sometimes it is completely the opposite. And you really have to be able to manage everything. So you have to evaluate not only your personality, but also take into account the obligations that you have outside of this business too, whether it be family or maybe you're keeping another job and this is going to be a side business that you have. Make sure that you're prepared to handle everything. You have to be the type of person who can see problems as challenges, not ready to throw in the towel right away. Something that you can work the problem so that you can find a good outcome and not just be willing to throw everything that you've worked so hard for away very easily. And then have you worked in a business similar to the one that you would like to open? Not a necessity, but often a huge benefit. And if you haven't worked in a business similar to the one that you would like to open, excuse me, make sure that you're very well read and educated about what you want to do. A lot of people only look at the tip of the iceberg when it comes to knowledge about their business, but you really have to take everything into consideration. And a lot of that's going to come up again when we talk about in the different series, especially with financing. You'll have to look at that too. So entrepreneurship is a gamble for sure. And I looked into Investopedia and, the statistics are not great. So that's why we always say, if you decide to move forward, you get to work one-on-one with a consultant. But, the statistics are not very reassuring. The business, about 90% of businesses fail. And as you can see, year after year, those percentages go up. So I often say it because I would not be a good small business owner myself because I'm not one to take a lot of risks, but I often look sometimes at some businesses that pop up in my neighborhood and I think, how did they do that? But then 6 months down the road, they're closed. And I think it's because a lot of planning didn't go into it. And you can kind of get something up and running for the short term, but to keep it running, that's the ticket that you really have to look at. So why do businesses fail? Lots of times it's that lack of leadership. You're just not a good decision maker. You just don't have what it takes to really be the leader of that particular business. Sometimes people get into a business because they see maybe easy money. Maybe there's a trend. And the one thing that pops into my mind, and I'm not saying it's a bad thing at all, but the axe throwing business, we see different cycles and recently we've had a lot of people come through our office who wanted to start the axe throwing businesses, which is great. But we wonder, is that really a passion or do they just see an opportunity to make money? And once the trend is over, what's going to sustain something like that? So do you really have a passion to kind of help that business evolve because you really love axe throwing and you see some potential there? So you have to have some sort of a passion about your business. You can't just be in it for the money. Business is probably one of the biggest thing is the lack of capital that they have. And we have seen a lot of businesses, I bet you've seen it too, people just kind of bootstrap their business. As I've mentioned, just about anyone can get a business up and running. And I have seen, just people scraping a few pennies together to get their doors open. But the real trick is having that working capital available to you to pay the bills, to pay yourself, at least for, several months before you have good revenue coming through the door as you had planned. And then First and foremost, lack of planning. As I've mentioned before, planning is key to getting a good business started. And so that leads me to kind of plug the SBDCs because the next statistic shows that, I had said earlier 90% of businesses fail, but businesses who work with a small business development center, this number is from 2017 from a study that our lead office did. But after 8 years, 83% of the businesses that we work with are still in business. And that's just a really big number compared to the national average. And I think it's because, first and foremost, we're all about planning, and we really have our clients put together a solid business plan. We want to educate them about their financials and their operations. And we want our clients to use us as a sounding board and to gather information so that they are successful. So that was my plug for the SBDCs. So how do you know if your business is going to work? And there are lots of different things that we can do, but this list, I'm going to go through them one by one. Um, will really help you figure it out. And a lot of it's common sense, I won't lie, but obviously you need to research the industry that you're going into. You can't just ask family and friends if something sounds like a good idea. Your friends and family are going to say, oh, yeah, it's a great idea. You should try it. Or, maybe you're going to be a baker and they love your cookies. And so, yeah, they'll tell you to be a baker because you're going to be baking cookies for them all the time. But you really have to look at the industry. What's the trend looking like? Not just short term, but long term. And when we say research the industry, we want you, again, to have knowledge about the type of business that you're opening. We want you to look at the trends of the industry itself. And when we look at those trends, I don't just Google information because there's a lot of misinformation out there. My suggestion would be to go to either a library and look at some of their business research tools that they have available to people who want to use them. Or you can come to the Small Business Development Center. We do a ton of research for free, and we have subscriptions to a lot of different databases that give us good information. So research the industry. Does your product or service exist? And, sometimes people come to us and they think they have this really great, unique idea. And, lo and behold, after a little research is done, we find out that it already exists. Or something very similar does exist. So you want to figure out what you're going to be, I just got distracted for a second, whether that product is already out there. Lots of people come to us, like I said, and they think they have, the next best thing going. And then after a little bit of research, they find, that's already there. That already exists. So I'm not going to get rich doing that. What are the benefits of your product or service? Is it going to benefit society as a whole? We've had a number of businesses come to us because they have been able to manufacture PPP during the pandemic. They found a niche to get their business started. So is it going to benefit society, or does it have a whole other benefit? Is it just simply entertainment? Is it going to benefit how many people? So look at what your product is going to bring to the table. Then you want to talk about your competition. And, again, I would recommend identifying at least 3 or 4 competitors who are geographically close to where you are and in the same type of industry that you're in. Lots of people will say, well, I'm the only one in that industry. Well, then the next thing that you have to think about is, who is your indirect competition? So you might be thinking about, I don't know, starting a bowling alley. And you might be the only bowling alley, but on one side of you is a movie theater, and on the other side of you is, an escape room. So people who have disposable income and they want to do something on a Friday or Saturday night, where are they going to spend their money? and how will they choose between those three and what's going to set you apart. So, if you're the bowling alley, the escape room, and the uh, movie theater are going to be your indirect competition, but you're all kind of going after the same dollars. And then you might have a very, I don't want to, I guess, an ordinary business, something that, maybe you're a gift shop or a bakery or a hair salon. But what makes you better than the competition that's out there? Is it customer service? Is it certain products that you carry? Do you have great return policies? Do you have better pricing? What's the one thing that's going to set you apart from the competition? Maybe your business is just cleaner than the others, which is oftentimes something that people look at. But you have to really figure out what your little carving out your market is going to look like and what's going to set you apart. Who's going to buy that product or service that you're selling? And you really, again, have to find out who your target market is. And it can be, a very specific market, or it can be a very broad market. And that can be up to you sometimes. But again, there's a lot of research that needs to be done. And again, it's something that we can help you out with. We have a lot of the census data and demographic information at our fingertips. We would be happy to pull any information like that for you. The census data is available to anyone at census.gov. But if you want something a little bit more in depth, or, we can maybe analyze a little bit more for you to see how it fits with the industry, we can do that. But know who your target market is going to be. And then on top of that, once you know who your target market is going to be, then you really want to think about how you're going to market to that target market as well, because there are a lot of different avenues that you can take. And you'll get that information when you work one-on-one with a consultant once you get that far. The other thing that I mentioned too is, do you have experience? If you have the opportunity to work in an industry, like the business that you want to open, that's always a good thing if you can. But if you can't, that's okay. Just do your research, do your due diligence, and learn everything that you can about that industry. My husband and I have a good friend who just opened a brewery, and he's doing it the right way. He started as doing his own home brewing before he sold anything, and learned about the different, I don't know, uh, recipes, I guess, that you put together for beers, for different types of beers, and really tested them. And he put together a plan that's starting very small. He doesn't have a like a pub, so to speak, or he just does can releases right now. So he's just selling the beer. Eventually, he wants to, have a restaurant where people can come in and taste and all that kind of stuff. But he has a really good plan laid out. But he did his due diligence. He got the experience. He understands it. And the other thing that he did is joined a lot of professional associations. So he is involved with a lot of the craft brewers, not only in the area, but nationwide. So if there's something like that that you can be a part of to gain knowledge, I would really recommend you doing that. Excuse me one second. The other thing is sustainability, and not to be confused with environmental sustainability, but just sustainability in general is, how are you going to keep this business going? As I mentioned before, a lot of times people jump into business because they see an opportunity. Maybe it's a trendy business. I always think back to my mother-in-law, who, when my kids were small, she collected every Beanie Baby imaginable, probably 10 times, and was going to sell Beanie Babies on the side and make a boatload of money. And let's just say that didn't work out. We have tubs and tubs full of Beanie Babies around the house. But, how is your business going to be sustainable in some way? Excuse me. For the long haul, how are you going to keep it going once that big flash is over? So think about how it will evolve over time and what you can do to keep it relevant in the marketplace. And then last but not least, your business idea, you're going into business, I'm hoping, to make money. You have to cover personal expenses, business expenses, you have to feed your family, you have a whole bunch of things that you are responsible for. So you want to make sure that it's profitable. And when you sit down and you work through this, you want to look at all of the costs that it's going to take you to get your business started. What are all of your startup costs? Um, and then how much are you going to charge for services? And are you going to be able to cover the costs plus sustain the business? So that's what you want to do. So we work a lot with, again, getting your initial financing together. So you have a good chunk of working capital available to you. But then we also really emphasize cash flow and making sure that you have a positive cash flow in your financial projections. So, again, so you can pay your bills. I always look back, and this is ages ago, but I had someone come into the office and she had um, a little pomodoro. I'm not quite sure how you say it. Pomodoro, that you would hang in a closet that smells nice. And she simply was taking a styrofoam ball and gluing very small dried rosebuds on to this thing. And I think she was selling it. Now this is ages ago, like I want to say for $15. And she she didn't work for them, but she had some affiliation for a little bridal shop, and so the brides were very interested in having these to hang by their gowns to make everything smell nice. And, it was a nice little, um, like complimentary thing that brides were buying. So long story short, she came to us. She wanted to explore this as being an idea. And that was her only product, was this pomander. Well, you can only imagine. Once we figured out the costs and she had to get all of these rosebuds shipped from, I think she was getting them from China. But then the big factor was the labor in gluing these teeny tiny rosebuds to the styrofoam balls. I mean, it would take her hours upon hours to do, and there was no way her labor cost was being covered. So that's why we sometimes say, is this a better hobby than it is a business idea? In her case, it was a better hobby. I think she maybe fancied herself the next Martha Stewart, kind of starting off that way, but it really, she quickly saw too that it wasn't going to work out. Um, she could just